Hello, people. Such a weird thing to say to a camera. I hope we're ready to make some new choices. And with that pun for fun, there's really only up from here. So here we go. Let's dive right in. My name is Guy Waltman. I am very happy to be the health and wellness coordinator here at New Choices. And we're going to be going through a PowerPoint that details what are called the 10 nutritional commandments. Before we get into our first one, I'd like to just speak more philosophically and overarchingly about the modern day nutritional landscape. And there's really two opinions that dominate the world right now nutritionally. The first is what's called universal nutrition. And then there is another school of thought which refers to specific gut types. Those who subscribe to the specific gut types model basically have this standpoint that, there are like 7 unique gut types, and it's essentially that through the way that we live our lives, our gut microbiomes have become unique to us, and that there's going to be an abundance of nuanced ways that you have to eat that's specific to your physiology. Universal nutrition is more so predicated on the idea that we are so much more alike than different, and that although, yes, it is true that there's going to be uniqueness to our biochemistries, the reality that we are all the same race, the human race, is going to mandate or is going to support the claim that there are universal truths that apply to all people. Yes, we're going to customize nutritional plans to your unique biochemistries, but that's in the nuance. There are just universal truths that apply to all people. That is my standpoint. I am a universal nutritionist. The specific gut types does have an abundance of scientific merit, but the 10 nutritional commandments, in my opinion, detail those universal truths. And then so beyond the 10 commandments are when, I'll sit with people as a nutritional scientist and then see where can we customize what you need to eat based on who you are. There are many reasons why that would need to be done. If you're a type 2 diabetic, if you have eczema, et cetera, irritable bowel syndrome, so on and so forth. But these will be the universal truths. And here we go. Our first nutritional commandment is stick to Mother Nature. That is not a golden rule. It doesn't mean that you will necessarily eat healthfully. There are further commandments down the road that will explain why. But the spirit of sticking to Mother Nature gets into a concept called the nutritional suitcase. This is a nice metaphor that I've come to really enjoy to help people understand the 3 different kinds of calories. So a calorie is just a vehicle. I want you to think of a calorie as a delivery system for either energy or for something called micronutrients. So you can picture a T diagram, the word nutrients right here. There are 2 kinds of nutrients, macro and micro. A macronutrient is a food, and micronutrients are things that are supposed to be found inside of foods. Say that one more time. Macronutrients are actual foods. Micronutrients are not foods. They're things that are supposed to be found inside of foods. So the vehicle, the calorie, the food, can come in 3 different forms. It can be empty, it can be hazardous, or it could be nourishing. Go back to this concept called the nutritional suitcase. I want you to imagine calories as suitcases. If I rip and open up a power bar, 330 calories, chew it and swallow it, I want you to imagine that down my throat just went 330 tiny little suitcases, okay? 330 calorie protein bar. Now, each one of those 330 suitcases, our body is going to unzip, open it up, look inside, see what we got. The thing that unzips the suitcase and opens it up is called our enzymes. So sometimes when we unzip that suitcase, we look inside, there's nothing in there. It's an empty suitcase. Those would be called empty calories, meaning there's not a single vitamin, not a single mineral, not a single antioxidant to be seen. In fact, allow me to amend my language there. That's not exactly the case. It's essentially that there's a negligible amount, either zero, right? There's no micronutrients to be found inside, no vitamins, no minerals, no antioxidants. It's an empty suitcase, or just like a really negligible amount. Pizza, for heaven's sakes, is an example of an empty calorie, not because there isn't a single amount of, or any even trace amount of vitamins and minerals in the pizza sauce or something, or the vegetables that are on top. But it's like, come on, for all intent and purpose, there's no real micro nutritional value to be had there in pizza. Sometimes we unzip the suitcase and, oh, there's stuff inside. It's just really bad stuff inside. Sometimes there's food colorings in there. Sometimes there's preservatives. Sometimes there's remnants of fertilizers in there. So there's heterocyclic cancer-causing amines in there. Those would be hazardous calories. That would be your Cheetos. That would be sodas. That would be, get in here, you loser. I'm doing, no, the nutritional seminar. Say hi. Say hi to the fans.
Hi, fans.
All right, goodbye. Sometimes we open up the suitcase and there are great things to be had in there, nourishing calories. So that's when you open it up and there's all your vitamins, your minerals, your antioxidants, and it's usually going to mean that it's from Mother Nature, right? So stick to Mother Nature is a guiding force that helps us ensure that at least the vast majority of our caloric intake is going to be from nourishing calories. Well-packed suitcases. How do we get to the next slide? Bang. Okay. Nutritional commandment number 2 is less of a commandment and more of an understanding. The understanding that we're seeking is that deficiencies equate to symptoms. The body runs on ingredients. The biochemistry of the body is dependent on the ingredients, the micronutrients that we eat or drink. Water being actually by far the most common ingredient in your biochemical reactions. But sodium, calcium, magnesium, etc., these are the components that our body uses to perform its functions. If you are grotesquely deficient in any one of those vitamins or minerals or ingredients in general, like water, then you're going to be symptomatic for what that ingredient is needed for in your body. So we can take a classic example. Let's even just start with water, right? Okay, so if you are deficient in water, there's going to be symptoms, right? What are going to be the symptoms of not having enough water? One you might easily jump to is like cotton mouth, right? So just literally just like sticky, like in your mouth. But it can get far more severe than that, of course. Like an ultimate symptom would be death. A slightly less severe symptom, but still really bad, would be, things like heat stroke, susceptibility, and things like that. Irregular stool. I can go on forever actually about the symptoms of being dehydrated, including the inability to perform fat loss, if that's something that you are interested in. If we were to segue to something like calcium, most people do know that calcium is involved in the structural integrity of your bones. Most people know that calcium is good for bones. So if you are grotesquely deficient in calcium, then you will have a myriad of symptoms, but one of them that you might suspect would be bone-related issues. There are way more, though. Kidney stones. Having kidney stones is, well, assuming that the stone itself is a calcium stone, there are other forms of stones, not just all calcium stones. But if you're having calcium stones, that is a grotesque deficiency in calcium. The mechanism by which that happens is the fact that your blood calcium levels need to stay at a certain level. Otherwise, well, that's fatal, right? If your blood calcium levels get too low, then you will die. Well, your brain won't allow that to happen. So what your brain will do is your brain will actually begin siphoning calcium out of your bones to rectify that problem. The issue with that is that the siphoning of calcium out of the bones that occurs is unregulated. So it actually happens in way too great of an amount. So the problem overcorrects itself. A tsunami wave of calcium gets sent to the kidneys. The kidneys can't possibly filter it all, creates a stone. The issue was being caused by the fact that you were not ingesting enough calcium in the first place. That's why your blood calcium levels got too low. So the remedy is not going to be, as it is so often recommended that people do, cut calcium out of your diet. That was the problem in the first place. The takeaways that we see on the slide, the first one being that you can have vitamin and mineral-based interventions, is along this train of thought. So if you come and the symptoms that you present with include calcium stones, for example, then there's a vitamin and mineral-based intervention that can be done there. It's, can you seek more calcium, right? That's, so now we can change, we can amend our way of eating such that we prioritize calcium. That would be a mineral-based intervention. Let me see what my bullets here are. Healing requires the proper ingredients. Yes, of course, right? So this, like, rectifying the issue of kidney stones for all intent and purpose would be called healing, but there are just so many others. Physiology requires the proper ingredients. Yes, okay. At the bottom, so glad we have that written, healing often requires multiples. This is a really interesting concept. The issue, once an issue has occurred, let's take eczema, for example. Eczema being caused by 4 things, but one of those 4 things is that your body is starved of its moisturizing molecules, essential fatty acids, aka your omega-3s, your omega-6s, and your omega-9s. If you therefore begin a path to try to reverse your eczema, which is a completely reversible condition, the amount of omega-3s, omega-6s, and omega-9s, again, what are called your essential fatty acids, is going to far exceed the serving size on a supplement that you buy. You can think about the serving size on a supplement that you buy as the amount needed to make sure the problem doesn't get any worse, or like the prevention amount. So if you don't currently have eczema, the serving size is going to be the amount that you need to take to make sure you don't get eczema. But if you have eczema and you are trying to reverse eczema, the serving is going to be way more than, or the amount you're going to need is going to be way more than the daily serving size. I've worked with people with eczema, and in my estimation, it's about a 9 times multiple, 9 times. I had a client who was terribly severe with eczema. I've shared his story before. His eyelids were completely crusted shut in the mornings when he would wake up in the morning from like the sleepy seeds that you may get in the corner of your eye. His eyelids would be completely crusted shut. He would have to basically dampen his eyelashes with a washcloth in the morning to get his day started. He goes, he's given me the whole "I've tried everything" line, and we talked about essential fatty acids, and he goes, "I've tried those," and I was like, "Well, were you trying the serving size?" Like, was puzzled, and I was like, "Yeah, no." Like, and you brought in the bottle. The serving size was 3 pills a day, and that's what he was doing. I was like, no, we need to be taking 27 pills a day, and that's what he did, and he no longer has eczema. So the idea of healing often requiring multiples is, well, worth knowing. Okay, listen to your body. The the more tongue inside of cheek way of saying this is that the body doesn't make shit up. So your body, stuff up. The body is not going to bloat for no reason. Your body is not going to have diarrhea for no reason. Your body's not going to say, "Oh, we haven't had a rash in a while. I think we're overdue for a rash. Let's do a rash today." Your body reacts, and therefore your physiological symptoms are always for reasons. Always for reasons. The most common reason for why your body communicates unhappiness to you is called lectins. Lectins are, and I see my face is kind of cutting off the slide there. Lectins cause of discomfort, symptoms. I'm assuming this is symptoms typical. Lectins are molecules, specifically proteins, that our body cannot break down. So just like we had our suitcase analogy for calories, I'm going to give another analogy now that I hope you can visualize along with me. I want you to imagine proteins as pearl necklaces. Many of you may already be aware that proteins are made up of what are called amino acids. So if the entire pearl necklace is a protein, each individual pearl would be an individual amino acid. The way that digestion is intended to work is that we chew and swallow these pearl necklaces, entire proteins, and in our stomach we have enzymes, aka pairs of scissors, that cut the string so that each individual pearl, aka each individual amino acid, can be distributed down into the small intestine, which is our vacuum cleaner in this analogy, to be absorbed individually. But you can imagine an instance in which our body doesn't have a pair of scissors for a specific necklace, right? So lectins are pearl necklaces that we don't have a pair of scissors for, and aka proteins that our bodies cannot break down to their smaller components. When that happens, the entire protein itself descends into the small intestine. The result of that is damage to the organ that is your small intestine. So your small intestine, in this analogy, has been the vacuum cleaner. Another way of thinking, maybe a more accurate way of thinking about your small intestine would be a paper towel, because the stomach's job is to liquefy what you eat, to actually liquefy what you eat. And if you can imagine just like water that's spilled on your kitchen counter, you take a paper towel and put it on top and absorbs right into it. That's the way that our small intestine actually does its job. But going back to the vacuum analogy to help with this metaphor, when you put an actual pearl necklace on a carpet at home, and then you take your vacuum cleaner, whose job it is to absorb things, right, to suck it up. If you try to run over the pearl necklace with the vacuum, it will stall the gears. If I actually cut the pearl necklace, though, and I put each pearl in a linear line on the ground, and then I take my vacuum to it, conceptually speaking, each pearl individually, the body would have no problem absorbing. It is exactly that way with our small intestine. The pearl necklace itself, in its full form, is too much for the small intestine to handle. But the small intestine is going to figure it out anyway. So what happens is the small intestine, our vacuum cleaner, sucks up that pearl necklace, and then the necklace goes up against the wall, the actual lining of the small intestine itself, and it's a tug-of-war battle, and the small intestine is trying to pull it up and pull it through, and it does. And when the pearl necklace gets yanked through the lining of the small intestine, it actually punctures a hole. It punctures a hole in the lining of your small intestine. That is called leaky gut. That creates a syndrome called leaky gut syndrome. That puncturing of your organ, the official term is called a micro tear. Micro tears cause, in this case, microbleeding. It literally creates a microbleed inside of your small intestine. Microbleeding equals immune response. So white blood cells and platelets rush to that area, and that's why you get swelling. So if you've had a meal in your life, we've all had a meal in our lives where we eat and we feel worse afterwards, especially or most notably in the form of bloating. That bloating, that swelling, is occurring because of punctured holes in your small intestines, which cause an immune response. Lectins, bad, in short. So lectins come in foods, and the evolutionary origin for lectins is that plants can't run away from you the way animals can. Because they can't run away from you, plants have had to come up with other adaptive ways to survive, and one of the ways that they came up with is let's create these proteins that animals that eat us can't digest. When they eat us, they'll feel like crap. They might not understand. They might not get the association that it's every time I eat that plant that I feel like crap right away, but eventually they'll learn. And that is what happens. So deer walk up to this plant, they eat the plant, they have diarrhea. The deer doesn't really have the intelligence to know that it was that plant that gave me the diarrhea, but then the deer eats that plant again. And then the deer eats that plant again. Every time having diarrhea, eventually even a deer will learn that it's every time I eat that plant that I feel like crap. And that is a pretty nifty mechanism for survival. Lectins, therefore, should be avoided or at least tempered with or tempered down. And common sources for lectins are seeds. Okay, so the seeds of I think it is just seeds, like not strawberry seeds, but like you'd be shocked, like seeds of cucumbers or seeds of bell peppers, seeds of tomatoes. Lectins are in peanuts. Peanuts are not actually nuts; they are beans. And lectins come in well, the most popularized lectin by far, I can't believe I haven't said this yet, is gluten. Okay, so there are many different known lectins, but the most popularized is gluten. Gluten is not worse for you than the other lectins, it's just the most popularized. To wrap up this slide, I would say that you don't need to learn all the lectins out there. You don't need to learn the foods that those lectins are in. What you do want to do, however, is actually understand that you should never feel worse after eating. And if you do, it means that you ate something that your body didn't agree with, but it was almost certainly a lectin. Take inventory of what you ate. Try and find what specific food or ingredient within your dinner, your lunch, your breakfast, whatever, your meal gave you that problem. If you don't know, come talk to me. Lectins should be something you're at minimum aware of, and I can help you with that. Another lectin, however, one that is not from plants in its origin, is lactose. And that is, you've heard people say, I'm lactose intolerant. The issue with that statement, that you're lactose intolerant, is that it implies that your body cannot handle a molecule that other bodies can handle. We are all incapable of breaking down the molecule, the pearl necklace that is lactose, into its individual amino acids. We can't do it. Dairy is hazardous for far more reasons, however, than simply the lectin that it possesses in that form of lactose. Excuse me. Dairy is a hazardous suitcase, well, for a number of reasons, but by far, and it is by far, the biggest reason for that is the growth hormone of the cow that is within that food product. So mammals, by virtue of being a mammal, it is an animal that produces breast milk, have within their breast milk the growth hormone specific to that animal. So our mother's breast milk, if we were breastfed, has within it human growth hormone, HGH. HGH is an incredibly potent hormone that is designed with one purpose in mind, which is to make us grow as absolutely rapidly as possible, because our infants are born in such vulnerable states. So that would be a threat in terms of survival. So HGH in mom's breast milk, again, designed to stimulate lean body tissue and bone density. HGH, just to give you a real understanding of what we're talking about here, HGH is what is classified as an illegal steroid if you are a professional athlete. If you know the names Barry Bonds, Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, Jose Canseco, Roger Clemens, etc., like the steroid era in baseball, what those gentlemen were putting in their bodies, what the Russians are classically known for cheating in the Olympics, right? what these athletes are putting in their bodies to enhance their performance athletically is human growth hormone, the same exact thing that is in a mother's breast milk. It makes you jacked. That is not, I repeat, that is not what a cow's growth hormone does. Bovine growth hormone does actually the opposite. It stimulates body fat storage. The way that cows have learned to survive, evolutionarily speaking, is to be big and fat and difficult to kill, and to have their internal organs protected from a very thick layer of body fat and hide. And you know that baby cows are not born fat at all. Calves are skin and bones. So believe it or not, to a cow, evolutionarily speaking, that is a problem. So mom's breast milk is designed to fatten that baby calf in as absolutely little time as possible. And in the modern day era, there is still no technology that is able to distill out of any dairy product the growth hormone of the cow. If you would like to be the next billionaire in the world, I suggest you work at that. If you can actually advertise that the bovine growth hormone is removed from your ice cream, from your yogurt, from your cheese, from your milk itself, you will be a billionaire. But it doesn't exist right now, which means that every time you consume those big, like the dairy big four, right? The ice cream, the yogurt, the cheese, and the milk itself, you are putting in your body the growth hormone of another animal. And we are the only species that actually ingests the reproductive fluids of another animal. We would find that really disgusting if we used breast milk pumps on pregnant women to give milk to baby cows. But for some reason, the reciprocal of that is not gross to us at all. It's not your mom, it's not your milk. And we're not even intended to have our own mother's milk beyond a certain very young age. The idea that we should be having the milk, the reproductive fluids of another species at all, let alone throughout our entire adulthood and lives, is the power of highly effective marketing. And it's a problem. So the single most potent health intervention that one can make, or not one can make, that the typical American can make is to cut dairy down, if not out of your life entirely, but just as absolutely much as possible, little to no dairy. Dairy is also high in sugar, and there are just some issues with it. But not to beat a dead horse, or in this case, cow. Just trust me on this fact that in addition to the lectin, the growth hormone, the sugar, dairy is just a triple whammy. And if you are contemplating ways to improve your physical health and your mental health, and you are a dairy snob, this would be a potent nutritional intervention you can make. And if you're like, Guy, I just can't give up my cheese, can't do it, go goat cheese. So the growth hormone of a goat is far more similar in its nature to the growth hormone of a human being. It stimulates lean body tissue. Goats are not fat. Goats are jacked. You can picture like mountain rams that are like, boom, like, locking horns. They're muscular animals. Goat growth hormone is still going to be a foreign body to us. It's not going to be a net positive, but it's going to be so much more mitigating in its health consequences than dairy meaning cow. Okay. We have occasional to frequent fasting as our fifth nutritional commandment. The workout that your internal organs get when you eat food is in the form of digestion is very similar to the workout that your biceps get when you go to the gym if you're doing curls. Asking your body to work out all of the time, if you are someone who is a snacker, is asking a lot of your body. And in the same way that when I leave the gym and I'm done doing my bicep curls, my biceps get a chance to recover, before the next workout, your small intestine wants that same time off, right? So and your stomach does too. When we are digesting actively, your stomach's working. The organ itself has muscles around it and it's working. The cells within and around your stomach are also working because we just distributed all of our enzymes, our hydrochloric acid, our acidity into the stomach. Well, we need to start making more stomach acid for the next time that we eat, right? So you have cells that line your stomach called your chief cells, and those chief cells' job is to make hydrochloric acid and then to hold on to them until the next time you eat. Well, do you want those chief cells to have to be working 24/7 around the clock because you're constantly asking them or mandating that they release hydrochloric acid into the stomach itself? No, you don't want that. When the food descends into the small intestine, there is a movement that occurs throughout the 20 plus feet of small intestine that you have. The movement is called peristalsis, but your small intestine has to, like the way that when your toothpaste tube gets low, the way you'll take your finger and you'll slide it up like that to try and get the, whatever remnants of toothpaste is still in there to the front. That is similarly what our small intestines will do. It'll like squeeze itself down all 20 plus feet of intestine. That's muscle movement. That's a workout. Those are bicep curls. And so snacking and eating from the moment you wake up to the time you go to bed or whatever, it's just a hell of a workout, guys. It's a hell of a workout. It's a marathon day after day after day for your insides. If you have digestion issues, you require healing, and healing can't take place if you're constantly asking it to work. It's either it can heal or it can be actively doing the job of digestion. So taking a break, fasting, is so important just for healing itself, for GI healing. But there's another virtue, a more popularized virtue, and a really exciting virtue of fasting, and the word for it is autophagy. It's the word you see down there versus metabolism. Everybody's heard of the one of two physiological states the body can be in, which is metabolism. Your body can be functioning metabolically. The other type of physiological functioning that the body can engage in, however, is called autophagic. Autophagic functioning, being in a state of autophagy. Metabolism is defined as the utilization of external calories you consume. Autophagy is going to be defined as the utilization of calories that we have from within, calories that we already have stored. Believe it or not, the body has a 0% capacity to engage in autophagic activity if you are functioning metabolically. You can be either in a state of metabolism or in a state of autophagy. So taking a break from eating is not just going to be good for your GI healing, but it's also going to allow your body to shift into a mode in which it will utilize the calories that you have right here, the calories you got right here, the calories that you got right here, right at your hips, calories we got stored. Autophagy literally means self-eating, and phagy meaning eating. So a study from the European Journal of Endocrinology, which is like the gold standard for this stuff. Okay, all you need to know about that is that they are experts in what I'm about to say. They studied over 5,000 people, and what they found was that on average, it takes a human being 16 hours of zero insulin spikes, aka no eating, to shift into a state of autophagy. The movement of intermittent fasting has emerged from this revelation, from this discovery. So again, they found that it takes the average person 16 hours of no insulin spikes, aka no eating, to shift into autophagy. That doesn't mean that 16 is a magic number. Some people, it takes 17 hours to shift over into autophagy. Some people, it only takes 15 hours. That's why it's called an average. So what you want to do, if you want to engage in fasting, which I highly recommend on an either occasional to frequent basis, is build up to it. One of the most common ways to do that, or my recommended way of doing that, is to skip breakfast. Again, evolutionarily, or I shouldn't say again, whenever you have a health-based dialogue, it's important to have it through what is called the evolutionary lens. What that means is you got to think about your evolutionary origins, and if you rewind the clock, evolutionarily speaking, mom did not have eggs for you waiting on the fire when you woke up in the morning. In an era pre-refrigerators and preservatives and even the mastery of flame, where we could like smoke things and get meat to last longer, like, you did not have food in the morning when you woke up. Sunrise meant we had to go get it. Your body, for millions upon millions of years, has been optimized to not have food first thing in the morning. And so skipping breakfast is not just a great way to start to introduce fasting into your life. It's a great way to more closely align yourself with your evolutionary history and optimize your biochemistry based on that premise. This is a great tidbit that is not too intimidating, that will apply to a lot of people and do a lot of people a lot of good. Skipping over hydration for the moment, in that it's something we all know about, the more intriguing part of this slide refers to or is related to carbonation. Carbonation via soda, right? Carbonation via soft drink is just a hazardous calorie. We go all the way back to stick to Mother Nature for that one, right? Nutritional commandment number 1, if we're abiding by it, it means that we're not really a customer for Coca-Cola anymore. So with that aside, we're really talking about like seltzer waters, and that's fine. If you are someone who really enjoys carbonated water, enjoy carbonated water. There are actually some studies, I have not read a single one of them, so I can't verify what I'm about to say, but I have heard many times that carbonated water actually hydrates you more effectively than still water. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. But I do know that carbonated water is not at all unhealthy for you unless you are having it with food, unless you are ingesting it simultaneously with food. And the reason why is that there is a chemical reaction that the carbonation has with our stomach enzymes, which decreases the acidity of our stomach acid. So it decreases the acidity of our stomach acid, aka increasing its pH. Right, so pH is the scale of acidity from 1 to 14, 1 being as acidic as something can be, 14 being the opposite of acidic, being basic, increased basicity. Stomach acid in a human being is supposed to be a pH of 2. A pH of 2. That's enough to liquefy the foods that you eat, vegetation most notably, but even meat that you eat. Carbonation, the chemical reaction that occurs from those bubbles with your stomach acid, actually has the ability to decrease your acidity all the way to a pH of 3, an entire number on the pH scale. Now, that might not mean much to you. I'd like to offer you a framework for that understanding, and it involves 2 stories. The first one is a personal anecdote from my life. When I was a freshman in college, I actually swallowed a chicken wing bone. We are having chicken wings in the dining center at Syracuse University, and I'm being chatty catty as I can be, and a chicken wing, like a portion of a chicken wing bone, went down my throat. I felt it happen. I was like, oh, that's not going to be good. Too little too late. What am I going to do about it now? Moved on with my life, kept eating. I am on my dorm room floor, fetal position, in agony. I was non-verbal but vocal. I was just making sounds, just oozing and wheezing, just like I was making sounds and no sense. And classic. And I get rushed to the hospital. I get thrown in the X-ray. By the way, my stomach is bloating. My stomach's out to here. And what the X-ray showed is that that chicken bone was going through my 20 plus feet of intestine, absolutely slicing up the insides as it went, just carving up the insides of my small intestine. Hold that thought. Story number 2, or detail number 2, involves the show that many of you may have heard of, Tiger King. I didn't watch it. I tried, didn't find it stimulating, but I do know the takeaway. The takeaway was something along the lines of somebody fed somebody else to the tigers or to the lions or to the big cats. And turns out that's a brilliant way to dispose of a body, because the stomach acid of tigers and lions, because they're carnivores, is actually a 1. The pH is a 1. So our pH, our stomach pH, is supposed to be a 2, and these carnivores have pH levels of 1. Did you get the takeaway? A pH of 1 is enough to liquefy an entire human femur, the whole body, the human body, liquefied, gone, dissolved, poof. Gigantic human femurs, and yet a pH level of 2 couldn't even liquefy a tiny little thin chicken bone. That is the difference between, that is the substantial difference between one numerical amount on the pH scale, 1 to a 2. The inability to liquefy a femur, let alone a little chicken bone. So imagine the effect of going from a 2 to a 3, which is what's going to happen if you are ingesting carbonation in parallel with your food. That's enough to where you're not even extracting the nutrients from your food anymore. You're not even unzipping the suitcases. You're not opening it up and seeing what's inside. You're not getting the vitamins and minerals and the antioxidants out. You are engaging in one of the easiest things to rectify, nutritionally speaking. Continue to enjoy carbonation. Just please do not drink it in parallel with your food. Hydration, more simply, is something that is relatively easy to explain. 50% of your body weight in ounces if you are not a regular exerciser, 60% if you are. What we mean is take your body weight, cut it in half, and then that's the amount you want to have in ounces. If you're 200 pounds, you should be drinking 100 ounces of fluid water a day. But if you exercise routinely, meaning if you are in the regular habit of perspiration, meaning you have, as part of your lifestyle, you engage in the behavior of excreting water, well, then we need to up it to 60%. That would be enough to ensure that we are not going to be symptomatic. Nutritional commandment number 2, deficiencies equal symptoms. You will never have a water symptom in your life. Sugar range. Sugar is both the single most important nutrient in the world. It is by far, it isn't close, and it is one of the most harmful in the world as well. Your body is not valued equally, the different components of it. It's called the anatomical hierarchy, anatomical anatomy, hierarchy, order of importance. The order of importance, okay, so the anatomical hierarchy, in other words, is that your brain is more valuable than your fingernails, for example, right? And your body actually views it and prioritizes it that way. By far, the most important thing about what you are is your brain, by far. Your brain is sensitive. Your brain can really only utilize energy that comes from sugar. There's only one other thing, literally one other thing other than glucose itself that your brain can utilize for energy, and it's called a ketone. Less on that for the moment, more on it to come. That being said, sugar must be prioritized, right? If you don't ingest sugar, you're starving your brain, because your brain has a 0% capacity to utilize energy from dietary fat or protein that you eat. Your brain needs energy from glucose, from sugar. But sugar is also a wet blanket on your metabolism if you have too much of it. So this refers to what's called the Goldilocks zone. There's an amount that we need to make sure we ingest to do right by our most important internal organ, our brain. And we got to make sure we don't have too much so that it doesn't cause problems like fatty liver, like types of diabetes, and so on. High blood pressure, even. Or just weight gain. We got to find that Goldilocks zone. The slide here, we see it says 16 to 24 grams per day. This is per day. If you are someone who is looking to engage in fat loss. 16 meaning the minimum that science tells us our brain is going to need per day. If you are good with your weight, though, and you're not trying to change it, those numbers can actually effectively double. 32 to 48 grams of sugar per day for weight maintenance. These are not perfect sciences. If you're younger, you can probably exceed 24 grams, even if you do want to lose weight. If you're older, like some of my elderly clients, we might need to really hug that 16-gram line, and it might even still be too much. We don't know. But here's what I can tell you. Going back all the way, right, to nutritional commandment number 1. If you are sticking to Mother Nature, you would be hard-pressed to exceed 32 to 48 grams per day. You'd be really hard-pressed to do that. You wouldn't be as hard-pressed to exceed 24 grams, but it's not hard to stay beneath 24 grams if you're just bringing intention to your nutrition and you are focused in your weight loss effort. But you would be a award-winning fruit snob if to exceed 48 grams of sugar per day. A medium-sized banana, 8 grams of sugar, right? So are you really going to be eating like what, 7 medium-sized bananas or 6 medium-sized bananas? No, you're not doing that. Sugar is a dose-dependent neurohepatotoxin. Whenever you see scientific terms, you want to read them backwards to make them make sense to you. So the sugar is toxic to both the hepato and neuro, hepato referring to your liver and neuro referring to your brain. Sugar is toxic to both your liver and your brain in excessive amounts, dose dependent. But again, your brain needs it. So let's make sure we get it, and let's get it from healthy sources, most notably fruit themselves. Meat is not really going to offer you any sugar at all. Vegetation will. Fruit, yes. Vegetables, a little bit. The McGovern report refers to, I'm surprised I wanted to go into that. The McGovern report, I'll make it quick, refers to a report that was issued by the US government in 1977, which essentially stated that dietary fat makes you fat. The US government was noticing a rise in obesity and preventable nutritional illnesses. And in a genuine effort to try and improve public health, the McGovern report of 1977 stated that, again, in short, dietary fat makes you fat. The problem with that is it was wrong. Dietary fat does not make you fat. We are tall glasses of water, and fat and water don't mix. So, and our bloodstreams are almost entirely water. And again, fat and water don't mix. So the vast majority of dietary fat that we consume, we actually just put in the plumbing, in the toilet. But sugar, as you know, dissolves into water. So really all of the sugar that we eat dissolves right into our bloodstream, and once in our bloodstream gets carried to all the problematic areas that you find you gain weight in. The McGovern report of 1977 is regarded by nutritional historians as the start of the obesity and TOFI epidemic of the country and pandemic of the world. I said obesity and TOFI. TOFI is an acronym that stands for thin on the outside, fat on the inside. It is essentially when If I slide you under an MRI scanner, you might as well be obese because you present with all the same symptoms. You're of a healthy weight, but you still have high blood pressure. You're of a healthy weight, but you still have fatty liver disease. You have lipid malfunction. You're type 2 diabetic. TOFI and obesity are essentially equivalent symptoms. Obesity and TOFI being symptoms. Very strong hot take here, but obesity and TOFI are not diseases. Obesity is not disease. TOFI is not disease. They are symptoms of lifestyle and nutritional choices. Diseases are things that once you have are pretty much there to stay. Like once you get Alzheimer's, it's kind of there to stay. Once you get cancer, it's kind of there to stay. Obesity and TOFI do not have to stay. There are things that we can do about those things. Those are symptoms that can be addressed. And the labeling laws, to the final bullet on the slide, are not doing us any favors. There is still a law that persists in the United States, a deplorable, disgusting, blasphemous law that states that artificial sweeteners do not need to be reflected on food labels. So that's how you get Coke Zero, for example. Right? So the law actually does not mandate that artificial sweeteners, unless they cause cancer. If they cause cancer, they have to be reported. How kind of them. But if they do not cause cancer and it's an artificial sweetener, it does not need to be reflected on nutritional labels, neither as grams nor as calories. So Coke Zero gets to exist and things like that. Sticking to Mother Nature, again, nutritional commandment number 1, helps us not need to worry about that because there's no label on a cucumber. There's no label on a watermelon. Right? Sticking to Mother Nature ensures that we're staying away from nutritional labels and lists of ingredients entirely, and it helps us stay within the proper sugar range that we need to optimize our health. Trans fats, bad. Next slide. Okay. Fats are, I'll use my glasses for this analogy. Fats are slippery molecules that are supposed to be able to do this. They're supposed to be able to pivot on their axes, even if I was to, put flexion on it in this direction. Fats are supposed to be able to pivot on their axes. Trans fats cannot. Trans fats are just locked in space, and that causes problems. There has been a misnomer that cholesterol causes heart disease. It does not. The reason why this misnomer has come to exist is because when we had really an epidemic or an exponential spike of heart attack deaths, we would cut people open via autopsies, look what's inside, see what happened, and we would see clogged arteries. And when you look at the clog, what is that artery clogged with? It's clogged with cholesterol. So we immediately labeled, oh my God, cholesterol is a problem. Cholesterol is not the problem. If you peel that cholesterol away, beneath it, you see that there's an anchor, a trans fat, that got lodged within the artery itself, which once the anchor is there, it provides trying to just come up with a synonym for anchor. It provides something that the cholesterol can now begin to accumulate upon. You again. So trans fats are the problem. If there was no anchor, there would be nothing that the cholesterol will be accumulating upon. And therefore, trans fats need to be either avoided or mitigated, dealt with. How do we deal with trans fats? And where do trans fats come from? Trans fats are incompatible with life. There's not a single plant in the world that synthesizes trans fats. They are laboratorical. However, there's something we can do about it. I consume trans fats all the time. I consume trans fats every time I eat French fries and chicken wings, and I love those two things. I consume trans fats when I eat the occasional processed food. The way we remove trans fats is twofold. One is exercise, and 2 is vasodilators. The common denominator between those two is that our arteries go like this, right? So if the trans fat, the anchor, is going through your bloodstream and then it gets stuck, how do we get it unstuck? Exercise, when it is cardiovascular in nature, does two things. It speeds up the current of that river, that is your blood flow, and that helps push it through. But more notably, the arteries go like this when you exercise. They expand and they constrict. They dilate and they constrict. That is really what dislodges the trans fat and allows us to flush it out of our bodies. I am actually having chicken wings tonight. I'm meeting my best friend in Poughkeepsie. He lives in New Jersey. We're going to meet halfway and we're going to grab a bite together. I'm going to be having a trans fat dinner. I'm going to make sure I exercise tomorrow morning. It's going to expand my arteries. It's going to make sure that those trans fats exit my system. Vasodilators are found pharmaceutically, yeah, but also nutritionally. Food has always been the world's first and is still the world's best medicine. And vasodilators come in the form of, well, most notably beets, and especially beet juice if you juice it down. But the beauty is this, I don't need to give you more examples. You got this, right? We all got a computer in our pocket. Quick Google, what foods are vasodilators? You can eat those, but it still won't be as potent as exercise itself. Another legislative calamity governs that of trans fats. In short, without going into it, because I do want to be conscious and conscientious of everyone's time, just know that the laws that govern nutritional labels are, you can't really trust them. If it says trans fats, if you see trans fats on labels, it means that there's trans fats in them. And even if it says the number 0, if it says trans fat 0 grams, it's almost always a lie. Believe it or not, they're allowed to lie legally. I can go into that more if you want, but basically, I'll make it unbelievably short. We'll move on. The law states that if there is less than 1 gram per serving, they can put 0. So it can't be trusted. Stick to Mother Nature. You won't have trans fats to worry about. But if you do, when you do, we all do, ingest trans fats, please make sure that you prioritize exercise. Also, consider your vasodilators. By virtue of trans fats being the anchor, we know that cholesterol is not the problem. Salt is not the problem either. These are these poor guys. They're getting such bad reputations, and it's a shame. Salt does not cause sodium does not cause high blood pressure. Cholesterol does not cause heart disease. Your body, the healthy functioning of your body is cholesterol all the time. It's cholesterol all the time. Every cell, every single cell. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm not engaging in innuendo. Every single cell in your body is comprised of cholesterol. The wall of the cell itself, the phospholipid bilayer, is made of cholesterol. Because of this, by the way, your brain, the actual noggin, if I slice my head open, cut it out, put the brain in front of you on this camera, that pink, purple, wavy, rippled organ that we've all seen Google image pictures of, that thing, that squishy thing, is made of cholesterol. It's what the brain is made of. Your liver itself is made of cholesterol. Your hormones are made of cholesterol. Your dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, endorphins, cortisol, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, all of these hormones are made of cholesterol. Because of that, your liver actually has a full-time job, which is to produce, to manufacture cholesterol. We couldn't possibly consume that much cholesterol to make sure that we're upholding the structural integrity and function of all these things that are made of cholesterol. Your liver has a full-time job, and it is to manufacture cholesterol. So how can we say cholesterol is the problem? Cholesterol is not the problem. Trans fats and other preventable factors are the problem, but please stop fearing cholesterol. If your cholesterol levels are too high, please come talk to me. That's a symptom. That is a symptom. You don't have cholesterol disease. You have a symptom because of the way you're currently conducting your life. And we can tweak how you conduct your life, which will bring those numbers down. Or we can throw a statin drug at it, which puts your liver to sleep and has a myriad of other health consequences. I have very strong opinions on those, but I'll bite my tongue on it. We see sodium deficiencies are far more dangerous than excess levels of sodium. Absolutely. Your heart, every pump of your heart is performed by what's called a sodium-potassium pump. People get arrhythmias and irregularities from deficiencies in sodium. Sodium deficiencies are very dangerous. Excess sodium is not. It's not that dangerous. However, the way in which the body is supposed to function is such that sodium is supposed to go in and out. It's supposed to be a two-way street. The way it goes out is sweat. And again, evolutionarily speaking, that was something that you did all the time. All of the time. Every day. Every day you sweat because we didn't have air conditioning. We were outside. Even if you didn't exercise, you were out in the sun. Every day you were sweating. So it was in and it was out. But what we do see now, especially in the United States, is sodium buildup because we're ingesting it in, but it's not going out. That will cause health problems. But what you do about it is you exercise and you sweat, or you go into the sauna. Even if you can't exercise, go to the sauna. Get a $10 membership at Planet Fitness or $20 at Vent and go sit in the sauna. Like, it's important to do that. Out with the old and in with the new is what that is referring to with sodium. Get old sodium out, get new sodium in, keep that train moving, and you can absolutely rectify things like high blood pressure. High blood pressure, yeah. So there's 6 causes of high blood pressure in the world. There's no such thing as a case of hypertension, high blood pressure, that is caused by one or a combination of 6 things. I can go into what those 6 things are if you're curious. One of those 6 things is excessive sodium buildup. That does not mean however, that you need to be avoiding sodium. It just means that you need to, salt your foods because it's important, but it just means you need to start sweating. But the other 5 causes of high blood pressure are far more common, by the way. Far, far, far more common. Last 2 slides. This one here is just philosophical. This is nutritional commandment number 10, is understanding that there's a difference between science and marketing. A lot of times, what makes marketing so effective sometimes is that it sounds a lot like science. Milk is good for strong bones. That sounds a lot like science, but it isn't. It's actually just highly effective marketing. And we know that calcium is good for bones. That's the idea there, right? That milk is good for calcium and calcium is good for bones. But no, milk is not good for calcium. Milk is good for what would be otherwise preventable diseases. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. We've already debunked that throughout this. Mom didn't have eggs for you on the fire, right? That's marketing, highly effective marketing. And we say swole is the goal. Protein, protein, protein. There's another myth. It's a complete myth, which is that protein, people think that protein is so much more important than it is. Protein is not that important. And it is not an energy source. It's a building block. And the myth being that protein is something that you need to have big muscles, like meat. That should have been the word I used. You need to ingest meat to have big muscles. Please go tell that to a silverback gorilla. Please go tell that to even the female gorillas. Please go tell that to an elephant. Tell that to a giraffe. Tell that to buffalo and bison. Please go tell that to horses on farms. Like, no, those animals have enormous muscles, and all they're eating is plants, right? Plants give us plenty of protein, all the protein that we need. The reason why those animals have bigger muscles is because of their testosterone levels. If you want bigger muscles, you need to find ways to increase your testosterone levels. And that's actually very easily done nutritionally. And I can talk about that if that's something you're interested in. But it's just highly effective marketing that has wired us for thinking that you got to have meat with every meal. I eat meat all the time. Every day I eat meat. But meat is the minority portion in what I eat, not the majority portion. And please just keep in mind that you're being marketed to at all times, and try your best to actually abide by what is science, not marketing. If you are saying, I am the bomb.com, and I am going to do all 10 nutritional commandments, I cheer you on, and I believe in you. However, if you're like, that was a lot, whoa, I'm going to need to watch this again, but I got to hear that guy's voice for another hour, I don't think so. Then I have for you 3 suggestions. The 3 most potent nutritional commandments for the vast majority of people to consider implementing are 4, 5, and I think 7. I think 7 was the sugar one. If you are rocking on the dairy train, it's hard for a lot of people. It's hard, but it is an incredible thing to do for your health. Please consider commandment number 4 if you're going to say, okay, like let me start with just one of them. That would be the one to start with if you think you can manage it. Fasting is another great one to consider starting with if all 10 are too daunting for you. Just start by skipping breakfast. Start by reducing the number of times that you eat from 3 to 2. And if you're eating above 3 times a day, get down to 3. Okay. 2 times a day is the amount that I eat without fail, twice. I eat 2 times a day. Lock in on sugar. That is a tough one. People are addicted to sugar, and I know that I am actually. Absolutely, I am. Absolutely, I'm addicted to my cell phone, and I know that because I carry it around with me, even in my own home, from room to room. Right? Like we all have our addictions and our challenges, and sugar is definitely one of them. Those would be my 3 recommendations for people. And just know that as we wrap up here, as a quick final word, just know that my job, we can start with just my job here at New Choices, is not just for our participants, it's for all of you as well. Please don't be shy, reach out, come sit with me. I'm not that scary, and we can talk about your life and how we can improve it and optimize it. And I would love to learn from you as hopefully as much as you get to learn from me. But also just know that by doing so, beyond my job here at New Choices, by doing so, you allow me to live within my purpose. The purpose that I have manufactured for my life is to facilitate human flourishing and diminish human suffering. And I get to put my head on the pillow at night feeling fulfilled when people, potentially like yourselves, come sit with me with a desire to improve your life and engage in self-betterment. I enjoy that more than anything in the world. And I hope that I can align myself with you and your goals for your life and help you live the life that you want to do. By doing so allows me to live within my purpose. I don't know if this is going to end when I hit this next button, but it has been a joy ranting for 1 hour and 8 minutes. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any questions, and make some new choices.